So I am Guatemala. I am the orange and green lighting up the town. It shines through the people, the fruits, the flashing lights on the motor taxis. I am the early morning, giving the day its first sign of life and continuation as the purplish early sky turns into a hazy orange and red before the sun starts to heat up. I am the bustling town of San Juan. The flow of the friendly people, tuk-tuks, and hard work coursing through the streets, as it does most days. I have a feeling of relaxation, but also of productivity, as I admire the huge sloping volcanoes and the fishermen on Lago Atitlan. I am my host sister Linda, watching the television in the living room as I draw whatever comes into my mind, usually a sunny scene with some volcanoes. I am the fresh, hilly coffee farms along the road as the truckloads of students drive past, taking in the smell, the landscape, and the fresh air.
Que a veces no me gusta tu forma de ser, luego te me desapareces y no entiendo muy bien por qué. No dices nada romántico cuando llega el atardecer, te pones de un humor extraño con cada luna llena al mes, pero todo lo demás le gana lo bueno que me das. Solo tenerte cerca, siento que vuelvo a empezar. Yo te quiero con limón y sal, yo te quiero tal y como estás, no hace falta cambiarte nada. Si vienes o si vas, si subes y bajas, si no estás seguro de lo que sientes. Tengo que confesarte ahora, nunca creí en la felicidad. A veces algo se le parece, pero es pura casualidad. Luego me vengo a encontrar, con tus ojos me dan algo más. Solo tenerte cerca, siento que vuelvo a empezar. Yo te quiero con limón y sal, yo te quiero tal y como estás, no hace falta cambiarte nada. Yo te quiero si vienes o si vas, si subes y bajas y no estás seguro de lo que sientes. Yo te quiero con limón y sal, yo te quiero tal y como estás, no hace falta cambiarte nada.
This world keeps spinning with each new day. I can feel a change in everything. And as the surface breaks, reflections fade. But in some ways they remain the same. And as my mind begins to spread its wings, there's no stopping curiosity. I wanna turn the whole thing upside down. I'll find the things they say just can't be found. I'll share this love I find with everyone. We'll sing and dance to Mother Nature's song. I don't want this feeling to go away. Who's to say I can't do everything, but I can try. And as I roll along, I begin to find things aren't always just what they seem. I wanna turn. This world keeps spinning and there's no time to wait. Will it all keep spinning, spinning round and round and upside down? Who's to say what's impossible and can't be found? I don't want this feeling to go away. Please don't go away. Please don't go away. Please don't go
Let's pretend to feed each other. Pretend to
this house of remains of what was thought but unsaid. All the calcified arithmetists who do with the math. And it would take a calculator blow to the head to light the eyes of all the homeless sociopaths. Oh, on and on, we are the homeless sociopaths. Oh, on and on with all the homeless sociopaths. Calcium ions that buried deep in your chest. Oh, calcium ions that buried deep in your chest.
So thank you, Corinne Simis, for putting together that footage. And thank you all for being here this evening. A 2-week journey to the highlands of Guatemala has its share of complexities. So trying to convey the experience of a group of 21 individuals traversing the landscape together is quite daunting, to say the least. So we hope that we can offer a taste of our experience through photos, narratives, film, and a little bit of poetry sprinkled throughout. And we really want to express our gratitude to our families, to our friends, to our community for helping to make this experience possible for us. And I apologize if we have a few technological glitches throughout. We'll do our best.
So traveling through Guatemala with the program Where There Be Dragons allowed each one of us to experience the beauty of life through a lens of perspective. Dragons is an organization that brings groups into the heart of culture. They allow us to travel like locals, live with families, apprentice with artisans, and learn from scholars, sages, and community leaders. This allows us to access phenomenal beauty, engage deeply with local communities, and ignite our curiosity. Traveling through Guatemala, it gave us a wide understanding of Guatemalan culture as a whole. Each place had its own purpose. San Lucas, the first place we stayed, was where we began learning about permaculture and the role it has locally. San Juan, the next place we visited, was where we spent most of our time with our host families and taking lessons at the local Spanish schools. Continuing on, there was a brief urban excursion to the city of Shela, a profound experience in Pacha, and time spent wrapping up the trip at Earth Lodge, looking down at the beautiful city of Antigua.
Throughout our travels in Guatemala, we worked with countless incredible people. Here I'm only going to share with you a few of these people. Miss Gatz. We all knew going into this trip that Miss Gatz was the kind of person who always had a plan, always had an exact itinerary as to what was going to happen each day and how the trip was going to go. There were an intense amount of changes made to our trip that came out of nowhere, and watching Miss Gatz handle it with grace and gratitude was inspiring. Also, getting to know Miss Gatz personally, I have found how hilarious and fun to be around she is. You would think going on a trip with your teacher wouldn't be fun, but Miss Gatz could not have made this trip any more amazing than it was. Thinking back on our constant laughter and cracking jokes about the strangest things are some of my fondest memories. One quality about Miss Gatz that I truly admire is her ability to be there. If you're feeling down or homesick, Miss Gatz will help you through it without a second thought. Whether you need a hug or for her to not ask you what's wrong, she will do whatever she can to help you. Juan Salvador Galich, also known as Juancho, was one of our Dragons instructors who led us through our journey in Guatemala. Juancho is a stellar human being, the kind of person I aspire to be like. The kindness and love he is capable of is astounding. Throughout the trip, in the best way possible, Juancho served as my rock, as I'm sure he was for many of my classmates. Whenever I needed any type of support, he was there to supply it, similar to Miss Gatz. Juancho grew up in Guatemala, and therefore he supplied a greater knowledge of Guatemala than was possible for any of us to have. Hearing about the supposed god named Juancho Rai talked about after returning from his first trip in Guatemala Well, let's just say Juancho lived up to his reputation. Even from the beginning of the trip, Juancho had some personal troubles that never seemed to stop him, from being the life of the party. At times, when we were all feeling down or just a little out of it, Juancho would always be there to make us smile. Juancho brought happiness to our group when it seemed impossible to do so. Then there is Miss Gatz's other half, Angie Del Vecchio. Before this trip, I had only met Angie once, not including the Guatemala meetings. I never knew what a fun and enthusiastic person she was until spending 2 weeks with her in Guatemala. Not to mention her life-saving medical skills. Seeing how open-minded she is and the positive look she has about everything is really awesome. Not to mention that she is absolutely hilarious. She always knows how to put a smile on your face, even when you're determined to be in a bad mood. Liz Wigg was another Dragons instructor on our course through Guatemala. Liz is one of the strongest women I've ever met. This Dragons course was one of the first, if not the first, Central American courses Liz had led. She had only guided trips in Italy because she was fluent in Italian. It was very interesting to watch her go through very similar struggles with Spanish as we did. Liz told me many stories of her insane rock climbing experiences, her perseverance through the early years of her son's life, and being a butt-kicking massage therapist. Not to mention she was incredibly nice and caring. Finally, the dad of the group, the one and only Brian Riley. Brian was one of the Dragons instructors who also led us through our journey in Guatemala. Brian had an immense amount of experience in the areas we focused around. For example, one day Joe and I were walking back from our meetup spot in San Juan, and as we walked into our kitchen, we saw Brian sitting there at our kitchen table having a conversation with our family. He was definitely the most mysterious out of the instructors, in the sense that sometimes he would be with the group and 1 minute later he would be gone, and later he would show up in the weirdest of places.
Leading up to our travels to Guatemala, we all had our expectations. For some, that meant no expectations because they wanted to dive in and experience it all when they had arrived with an open mind. For those that had expectations, theirs included things such as having trouble communicating, meals consisting of food that was grown there, and challenging homestays. There were many different things and feelings we experienced when first arriving to Guatemala. You would think that a group of students would be exhausted and sleepy after a long day of travel, but we were filled with joy and excitement when we arrived. Some of our very first impressions we had included the air quality and altitude. There was a lot more dirt in the air and it almost seemed thicker. On our first bus ride, we saw so many things. Fast, dangerous traffic, advertisements everywhere, a Hooters delivery truck, and lots of trash that we unfortunately didn't get pictures of. There was also lots of beautiful landscape and terrain that we had never seen before. One of everybody's favorite parts of the trip was the boat rides we took on Lake Atitlan.
Our final destination of the first day was a town on Lago Atitlan named San Lucas Toliman, where we were to spend our first few days getting acquainted with our new surroundings, our leaders, and the food we would be eating for the rest of the trip. After we got off the boat, we walked up what seemed like a very long steep hill and eventually made it to the hotel where we were to be staying. At the hotel, we were able to put on fresh clothes, take a shower, and a few of us stood around juggling a soccer ball. The small courtyard became our meeting point, and the dining room was where we had discussions about trip jobs and also learned a lot more about the history of Guatemala and how pollution and big corporations were affecting the country. We were also allowed into the town, and this was our first real chance to interact with the locals. We met a group of small children who were very excited to talk to us, and some of the boys played basketball with the local kids. At the hotel, our mornings usually started off with several cups of delicious coffee, and a breakfast that most often consisted of eggs, beans, tomato sauce, and tortillas, although we were once served a very sweet kind of oatmeal thing. And we also learned how to wash our clothes in the concrete sinks that were most likely to show up at our homestays. At night, we would have a closing circle, and then afterwards would often have a few rounds of cards before bed. One day, we took a walk through the market and saw the many different things that people had for sale, from fish that were still alive to shoes and chargers. During the day, we would go on excursions to Imop, and on our last day, we went to CPEC. San Lucas Toliman was our first home away from home. It was a chance to acclimatize ourselves to our new environment and get more comfortable with both each other and the cultural changes we would have to face. CPEC, or the Centro Eco Productivo y Educativo Cuchia, is located in the town of Quitchaya. CPEC is a farming cooperative located in a deep valley and was started by about 20 men whose goal it was to develop new ways for the community to exist in the modern world without losing respect for nature. They seek new ways to leverage their blessings with like water, agriculture, etc., to benefit the community in a sustainable way. These men are trying to develop and teach their techniques to all the families of the community, whose numbers come around to 160 families. CPEC features 3 levels of farming plots, with a plot for each family. On the first level, they grow watercress, wrapping leaves, and a kind of fish called tilapia, as well as giant snails. The other 2 levels contain foods such as bananas, fruit trees, corn, beans, squash, and heritage coffee trees that grow throughout. Each family can grow whatever they want to on their plot, but only the coffee, wrapping leaves, and watercress are sold commercially. The rest is for the families to consume throughout the year. We were given a tour of the cooperative, and then we worked for a while planting watercress. Afterwards, we were able to cool off in one of the pools that they had and ate a lunch of fried tilapia, rice, and some greens. I wrote this about our experience with the snails. Every child learns to hum to the periwinkles and dog whelks that they find in tide pools or attached to the sides of the dock. The snails seem to dance, waving their tiny arms in the air, crawling on our hands. How strange it seemed to have this be a novelty, to have this unthinking action not recognized, an unexpected and unplanned piece of culture translated thousands of miles away.
The thud of 21 backpacks landing in the back of a dusty, worn-out truck bed echoes every morning. The race to get the perfect spot begins. From the bouncing vehicle, a wave of Buenos Dias rushes over anything that breathes in the streets. Mothers, fathers, children, workers, dogs. Most return with smiles and similar enthusiasm. Driving the exact roads of our distant friends, the history of these people seems to rush over us. Seeing everyone's normal day routines, their stories and cultures flow past us. Where will we go? Who will we see? What will be different about this ride? You can sit for hours and ponder the meaning of life. You can write novels, poems, and short stories on a topic, but you will never truly understand the beauty of life until you experience it for yourself, until you immerse yourself in it. Every person has their own set of wants and needs and desires, but it isn't until you go out and do the things that you can't imagine, that's when you really discover what you love. It took traveling through Guatemala on the back of a pickup truck to bring me to this conclusion.
EMOP is the Mesoamerican Permaculture Institute. They work to increase food sovereignty, safety, and family nutrition by using permaculture systems. They work with the community to increase education and awareness so that people have access to permaculture systems and safe, nutritious food. They also work with waste management. Permaculture is a development of agricultural ecosystems that are intended to be self-sufficient and sustainable. As much as possible, permaculture draws on patterns and designs found in nature. There are two ways of seeing the world: the anthropocentric view, in which humans are the center of the universe, or the biocentric view, in which humans are only one part of a greater whole. We are at the same level as trees or stars, a unique and equal part of our natural world. Interconnectedness is a major part of both permaculture and Mayan cosmovision, two things that EMOP uses to inform their own practices. EMOP has a seed bank that stores native seeds to keep and promote genetic diversity. Native seeds are able to adapt to their environment more quickly and are more resistant to drought and floods, have a higher resistance to pests and diseases, and don't need all those extra pesticides, herbicides, and other sprays that are bad for the health of both the plants and the humans. They can also be saved from year to year, and you don't need to buy new ones every year like with genetically modified seeds from Monsanto. While at EMOP, we help mix compost with soil, fill bags, and plant plants. We were all having so much fun getting our hands dirty and planting that it didn't really feel like work. We learned about these banners, made by the Beehive Collective, which is in Machias. These banners featured themes of war, resistance, capitalism, big corporations, and tourism in Mesoamerica. We also talked about the privatization of water and the exploitation of native people and resources. EMOP has a place for experimentation with different sustainability efforts. This is a solar oven that you can rotate to match the angle of the sun. I know I am not alone in saying that EMOP taught me so much about permaculture, Mayan cosmovision, sustainability, and just about life in general. Even though we were only there for a short time, it was a truly transformative experience.
So EMAP fed not only our bodies with incredible feasts of locally grown foods. The directors and educators of EMOP, Ronnie Leck and Gregorio Ajot, fed our minds and hearts with newfound knowledge of permaculture and Maya cosmovision. So meeting at Circle each day, we were surrounded by colorful images and new words. These represented Nawales. 20 symbols of elemental forces and animals assigned to a person at birth. So some would say that we each embody essential characteristics of these elements of nature. Students found out the names of their Nawales the evening before a ceremony with a local shaman. So upon establishing a sacred space around the campfire, the shaman called each of the Nawales. Students listened for their Nawal and then joined the shaman at the fire. I'm going to introduce each of our travelers this evening by their Nawal and also include elements of one of the 13 numbers that are also significant to their date of birth. And I hope that I can pronounce these right. So people born under Tsi make good priests and spiritual guides. They're very balanced, kind, just, strong, delicate, and agile. Connor. So students were each put to a test at some point along our journey where they were given more responsibility and less guidance. Their task, find the way up that mountain. Well, whenever there's a group hiking, you will usually find that it separates into smaller groups going forward at different rates of speed. Our instructor, Liz, recognized Connor as the bridge between the groups, making sure that one did not get too far ahead of the other. This was a term that he himself used in a recent conversation, a bridge, able to move equally among groups. Connor was born on day 2 of Tsi. Unsurprisingly, 2s attract partnership. Finding the balance in relationship is vital. It's vital for 2 people. Connor really stepped forward with a big heart and grew in his capacity for walking a bigger path and sharing more of himself. Connor, you are ready for all that is coming your way. So we have another Tutsi in the group, Ellie. As I stated before, people born under this Nawal, Tutsi, make good priests and spiritual guides. They are idealists who work for the community, are responsible and good administrators, and they have an adventurous spirit. They are practitioners of social justice and protectors. I think this embodies Ellie a lot. The animal spirit for this Nawal is wolf or coyote. For such a dog lover, that makes complete sense. Ellie was our fierce and loving protector of pups on this trip. And Ellie was born a Tutsi Dies, or 10. Those born under the number 10 are able to create with whatever is around to make something valuable and beautiful emerge. I concur. The world is ready for all the beauty that you are envisioning and manifesting. You're ready too, Ellie. People born under Toch bring energy and spiritual light to their homes as they acquire their energy from Father Son. Well, if you know Zan, then you know that his smile can light up a room. He can also beam those rays of light right into your heart. Toch are virtuous, have a flexible character, and they know how to resolve situations instinctively. Toch are strong and respectful, hardworking, and sometimes impulsive. Now, Zan was a surprise to me in many ways on this trip. I would never, ever have considered him impulsive, but he is, and almost with a sense of secrecy. There's a mischief quality about him that, again, brings lightness to those around him. So go light up the world, Zan. You too are ready for all that is coming your way. When determined to do something, they never turn back. This is Emosh. This is hard when you say, go find the mountain, said Graham. Well, the Emosh can also cause breakthroughs, both positive and negative. Graham was not afraid of taking initiative. He was not afraid of asking or responding to difficult questions, nor confronting problems. Graham was willing to listen, and he was always willing to offer thoughtful reflections. Graham has been transitioning to a place of responsibility to self and to others. This guy is ready to go. Graham, you are ready for all that is coming your way. Another Emosh in our group. Jimmy was also born under this sign. Emosh is also the essence of unity in all things. A gift Jimmy has is bringing forth humor and laughter. He can see the lighter side of a situation. The host family stay can be a stressful situation. Jimmy used his humor to relay the bathing situation in his household. He is a harmonizer, which makes sense as he was born as an 8, balance and harmony. Although I often experience Jimmy's fun and witty side, through this program I also saw the questioning, the compassionate and humble side, the aspect of self that is pondering how he might greater serve this world. Jimmy, you already do with your presence. At. Did you get that? At represents instinct and originality, but also the tangle of life, the things that trap us. It's a force that connects people or elements to get things done, and a filter that separates the bad from the good. So true for you, Rosie. When Rosie would speak to us during our circles at EMOP or in the evening with our group, her perceptions and reflections entangled us all. Her words of truth have resonance. Rosie is also an 11. Being true to oneself is very important for an 11, and it is so with Rosie. In moments of ill health, in moments of discomfort, she stayed true to what she hoped to gain from this experience. With a stable base, CAT can accomplish whatever they set out to do. You have a lot to accomplish, Rosie. You are ready. Those born under the sign of Ahpu are good observers and share a mission to reorient humanity. They are statespeople who willingly sacrifice themselves for the good of the whole. Courageous, kind, wise, sensitive to life, easily frustrated when confronted by obstacles, but solve problems with good communication skills. Corinne was our night owl. She created and held very important circles. She was able to create a space where people willingly shared a part of their vulnerable selves. She brought cohesion to our group. After our first evening circle, Wancho leaned over and whispered into my ear, Ahpu, she is a priestess. Corinne was also born a 6. A 6 personality is always interested in making whatever is going on in their life better. They are responsive to the needs of others and will usually try to find a solution that will work for all concerned. Corinne, you are ready for all that is coming your way, but remember to appreciate all that is happening right now. So we have 2 that fall under the sign of Kame. Jose being one of those. Those born under Kame are intelligent, respectful, and secure. They have self-control. A person born under Kame will have personal magnetism and an inclination toward leadership. Jose took charge as one of our lunch ladies. So the lunch ladies had the task of collecting snacks, going out and buying things for long trips on buses, and making sure that we were well nourished throughout the day. Jose is patient, he is organized, he seeks information for clarification, and he is magnetic. People in our group often sought him out or looked to him for guidance. Jose, you are ready for all that is coming. Another aspect of Kame is that in addition to their strength, they are delicate and intelligent and possessing spiritual forces. Kame is serene, content, generous, and caring. Yes, Joe is all of that. Joe is super kind and compassionate, always eager to participate and filled with a depth of curiosity. Born on the day of Kame 2, 2 represents duality and polarity. Kame looks to seek balance, so it is super fitting that Joe would be one of our support dogs, the role of checking in on the physical and emotional well-being of others, and Joe was superb in this role. His sensitivity and empathy serve as an early detection system. The Kame aspect of seeking balance matches his desire to bring unity and wholeness where there may be separation. Joe, you are ready for all that is coming your way. People born under Tihash are protectors of justice, healers of the incurable, brave-hearted, talented, and visionary. They're rational, but can also be intuitive and imaginative dreamers. Val participated for a second time in this program, and I can see how she felt compelled to return to the Permaculture Institute. She has been dreaming of a spiral garden since she first participated in the construction of one at the Institute 2 years ago. She has now made that dream a reality on our own school grounds. Thank you, Val and family. Val is also an 8, a person of structuring and restructuring. 8s are in a continual process of evolving and redefining what already exists. Val, you continue to evolve into an ever more engaging global citizen. Abby is Kech, strong, righteous. Kech is a day for focusing on one's community and carrying out good actions. Kech have very analytical minds. Abby was and is incredible at asking very key questions to help us understand something more deeply. In every instance where we met with a community leader, Abby listened and then posed questions to get to the heart of the individual and the obstacles that person has overcome or continues to face. She was born on the day of 1. So those strengths tend to be responsible, strong, and righteous. But also, on number 1, these people born are really good at starting projects. 1s are able to gather the energy that they need to create. They are independent and do not like to take advice from others. 1s have their own guidance system. They have very strong convictions and will often devote themselves to a cause that may be the focus of their lives. They usually have very strong opinions. So in a recent conversation we had, Abby and I talked about Abby being fired up. And 1s come under the god of fire and time, initiates and ignites. So I'm not sure if the world is ready for you, but the world needs you, Abby. Those born under this Nawal Ach are known for their ability as an arbitrator and intermediary. They take a shine to politics and other areas of leadership. Ach can help people with opposing viewpoints see the whole situation more clearly. I think this rings true for Sarah. But I think she is also striving to do this for herself, and her talents in telling stories through written and spoken word is a channel to connect and unite people, ideas, moments. Sarah took full advantage of her time in Guatemala to step out of her comfort zone and step into new ways of knowing and being. She was born on Ach 11. 11s have the ability to strip away what no longer serves so they can move forward into new creation. Sarah is now being called to India. I think that you are more than ready, Sarah. So the animal characterized by Eek is the hummingbird. I can see this in Chelsea, not only in the light gracefulness of her physicality, but also in the speed of her mind. Another aspect of Eek is that they are very good at mental pursuits. Indeed. Chelsea was born Eek 5. 5 people are very intelligent. They love to question what they see around them. They enjoy gathering information and organizing it into something productive. They are aware of that saying, knowledge is power. And they love to oversee projects to make sure that they are done correctly. They are very competent and usually rise to the top of any organization or group, and they make powerful administrators. Chelsea, you are ready for all that is coming your way. Persons born under Eek can adapt to any situation, are brave enough to confront any crisis, and are dreamers and innovators. I can see all of this in Thistle. There was very little that rocked her boat on this journey. What I appreciate about Thistle is that she can make so many connections. She is such a storehouse of knowledge and one of our great snail whisperers. Her imagination and creativity mingle with her actions. Interestingly, Thistle was born in Eek 4, and those born under the tone 4 are practical and in touch with reality. She definitely has these traits as well, which lend to her seeming unfazed by new circumstances and environments. Adaptability. Thistle, you are ready for all that is coming your way. Change, for probably more than anybody, was the core experience for Natasha. This was Natasha's second trip to Guatemala. Unable to locate her 2015 host family, Natasha landed in the middle of impermanence. Things change. And this is another component of Eek. Life is full of changes, and that this was the beginning of a series of goodbyes. Lots of goodbyes are happening right now, and on the other side of each goodbye is a hello. Natasha is so very much the vibrancy of life and carries a vitality that inspires and draws others near. Natasha, you are so ready for all that's coming your way. Eek is the soul of the elements and highly adaptable. Eek represents air, breath, and life. September, if he could be, would still be in San Juan, Guatemala. He quickly inhabited his home and community and opened to the freedom of discovery and exploration. September also inhabits the full range of emotions. He is completely present in a somber moment, and in other moments he expresses outright joy, and he brings that joy to others. Thank you for that, September. You're ready for all that is coming your way.
So, San Juan is the town across from San Lucas Toliman on Lake Atitlan. It's a little bigger than San Lucas and was busier and louder. The streets are busy with people walking, tuk-tuks, which are like the motor taxis, motorbikes, and buses. San Lucas is an artists' community, and there are lots of galleries and art shops selling beautiful paintings and other artwork, very unique to San Juan. There are tons of murals on the walls in the town, some depicting hidden messages and some just there for the beauty. We spent most of the days in San Juan with our host families, which was definitely a highlight, and we were lucky enough to experience Semana Santa in San Juan. We spent a lot of mornings there at the Ego Spanish School learning Spanish and Sutujil in Miss Gatz and Jose's case. San Juan was such a friendly community, and it was my favorite place we went, partly because we got familiar with the town, and it was really cool to start to feel independent and know where things were in the town. I think we all started to get more comfortable in San Juan because we were getting more comfortable speaking Spanish, and we're getting more comfortable with the town and our surroundings.
As I roamed the streets of San Juan, I had no place to be, no responsibilities. I was walking to walk and looking to look. I smile at a man selling coconuts. He looks up, waves, and smiles back. The day I returned from Guatemala, I walked through the streets of Southwest Harbor, assuming I would feel the same feelings, but I was wrong. I was stared at as if I was crazy, walking through the streets like a lost dog in search of a home. I was astonished to see how differently people viewed one simple thing.
Walking at night when everything turns different shades of black and blue and gray, and color only appears when the light of the tiendas spills onto the streets, with colored sawdust still stuck in the cracks between cobblestones. And there are dogs following us around, probably because they just want food, but we like to think that they just want to be with us. And the air is cool and humid, and this feels like we are exactly where we need to be.
When we arrived in San Juan, we all had one thing on our minds. While we were captivated by our first impressions of the community, excitement and a little bit of anxiety rushed through us all at the thought of meeting our homestay families in a few short hours. We gathered at the program house where the instructors helped us decide who was going to be siblings for the week and who was going to be alone in their homestays. Our families slowly started arriving, and soon we were saying goodbye to the group and following our families to our homes.
Each day with our families was different from the last. While we did follow a loose routine and schedule from day to day, each morning brought forth unfamiliar and interesting experiences. We would often find ourselves going places with our families and trying new foods that we didn't know existed. One of my fondest memories of my family is going grocery shopping for ingredients to make dinner. My family brought me to the store to buy wasquille, eggs, tomatoes, and rice. Instead of buying rice pre-packaged in a bag like we do at home, we bought the rice by the pound, using a scooper to empty the rice into a small burlap sack. We bought 2 wasquilles, which are kind of like a green potato tomato type thing, similar to squash. And when we got home, my mom taught me how to cut the wasquille into very thin slices so that we could dip each piece in whisked egg and fry it. It was really, really good. Our families introduced us to different ways of doing the same things, like grocery shopping or preparing dinner.
I enter the house and see my host mother Blanca at her loom, weaving a scarf. I ask her if she will sell it, but my Spanish is so poor that I'm unsure of what her response is. Her movements are as dynamic as the color patterns she has chosen, weaving the thread in and out, creating waves that traverse the entirety of nearly finished cloth. I ask her if I can try it. She seats me and I begin. We exchange a few words. Blanca teaches me an unspoken language on this day.
Through some awkward moments, broken Spanish, and makeshift sign language, we all got to know our families and settle into our routines. After the first day, the 4 a.m. symphony of roosters, dogs, and garbage trucks wasn't quite as startling. The unidentifiable breakfast foods were less intimidating, and the streets felt familiar. We got used to spending our afternoons playing soccer and cards with our siblings, sharing stories with our parents, and eating meals together as a family. On our last night before our departure, all of our families gathered at the program house and prepared dinner for us, and we shared our last evening meal in San Juan all together. In the morning, we exchanged parting gifts and goodbyes. It was with heavy hearts that we hugged our mothers, fathers, and siblings for the last time, and sincerely thanked them for welcoming us into their homes with such open arms and kind hearts.
Ana, mi madre, my mother. Ana inspired me from the moment I met her because of her tireless nature, her quiet calm, and her constant love for her family, for her friends, for her customers. I never saw her upset, I never saw her angry, and I never ever saw her sleep. In the morning, she would be outside working long before my eyes drifted open, and she would still be out there when I fell asleep, standing in the dooryard by the light of an electric lantern, patting out tortillas and flipping them onto the griddle where they would sizzle, radiating warmth into the chilly evening. Even the nights when I stayed up to pack my luggage hours after the sun went down, when the loud noises of the town quieted and her tortilla stand had long been closed, she would be sitting in the kitchen, wishing sweet dreams upon her sisters and their children as they departed for home, washing the last of the dishes from lunch, feeding food scraps to Lucas, the tiny kitten, or sitting on a chair, loom strung between her waist and the low metal ceiling, weaving a scarf, deftly entwining vibrant colors with her soft brown fingers, magically creating something beautiful. On the night of Good Friday, after the procession and well past midnight, I made my way home through the crowded street to find her outside on the doorstep, a peaceful smile on her lips as she quietly looked out over the crowds. We never talked about how she felt about the tourists that night. I don't know if they were good for business or if they were bothersome. We never talked about if she was religious or what the ceremonies meant to her, but that night was the most peaceful I ever saw her. The next morning, when she could have been tired and grumpy from lack of sleep, still, she called my name through the metal door of my bedroom at the same time as always, boiled hot water so that I could take a sponge bath shower, made me a smoothie and pancakes with sliced fruit, and sent me to school all on time, all with a smile of buenos dias and a how did you sleep? Anna taught me about having more in you than you think is possible, about how getting angry simply isn't necessary, and about never ever giving up. Thank you, Anna. I will treasure our time together, always and forever. Much love, Rosie.
Semana Santa commemorates the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus Christ. This event brings the entire city together, working to create colorful alfombras made up of dyed sawdust. While Antigua is the most famous for its celebration of Holy Week, it is nonetheless a coveted event for the people of San Juan. It is a true example of people being drawn together by a sense of community. By night, the festival turns into a procession, taking place in the streets upon the very alfombras that were made just hours before. Upon these vibrant carpets, representations of Jesus Christ of Nazareth and the Holy Virgin of Sorrow are carried from churches throughout the city.
Quetzaltenango, also known as Xela, is the second largest city in Guatemala, after Guatemala City. Xela is a very popular destination because it is at the junction of 4 major highways and is the nearest city to the tallest point in Central America. Throughout the city, there are many European-inspired buildings built by the Spanish in the 16th century, and the city is surrounded by many towering mountains and volcanoes. This very urban setting was quite a difference coming from San Juan, where the streets were full of tuk-tuks and lined with small tiendas. And in Xela, the streets were full of normal cars and taxis and had many chain stores. And our families in San Juan often had tin roofs and no running water. But in Xela, we were staying in a gorgeous hotel with hot showers and washing machines. To start off our first and only full day in Xela, we planned to go on a hike. But for an added challenge, we tried to navigate to the hill, Cerro El Baúl, on our own. All in all, it took us quite a while to locate and climb the mountain, but the view was spectacular. After our hike, we headed our separate ways to buy lunch and explore the city. Then we were tasked with buying ingredients and cooking dinner for everyone, which ended up being one of our biggest challenges as a group. We struggled to delegate tasks, but in the end, some people shopped, some cooked, and some cleaned. Then, to finish off our day in Xela, we enjoyed our meal on the 3rd floor balcony of our hotel.
The day we were supposed to leave for Guatemala, we were hit with some pretty hard-hitting news. The director of Chico Mendez's son had been hit by a car and passed away a couple of days prior to our arrival. None of us knew what to think. This was extremely upsetting news to those who knew the son and even those who didn't. There was a universal sense of uncertainty. None of us knew what this meant for our trip that had been carefully planned for over a year now. We were told that plans were subject to change and we should be prepared for it, but nothing could have prepared us for something like this. The Chico Mendez Reforestation Project
is a tree nursery established in the town of Pachaw. The idea was conceived by Armando Lopez and two other friends in 1998 as a way to take their own initiative regarding their local government, regarding their local environment apart from their local government. Their focus is on the reforestation of their local lands. The project started in Armando's home with 2,000 seedlings, and over the years following, his two friends moved on to other work, leaving him in charge. He ended up naming the project in honor of the famous environmental activist Chico Mendes, who died defending the Amazon rainforest. The project eventually thrived into 2 tree nurseries, producing 12 to 15,000 trees for reforestation annually. Shortly after arriving, we were given a warm welcome by Armando, his family, and others. We spent some time at the project learning about Armando's inspiration for Chico Mendes and his goals for the project. During our time there, we spent a couple of hours collecting duff. We took a short walk to the spot where we began working. Some of us dug up the duff while others crushed it so that it could later be used to make the soil for the trees. We were led by Olgario, a boy who worked at the project, who at 16 years old had become in charge of the project. We didn't get to spend much time doing this, but afterwards there was a universal feeling of accomplishment. After collecting the duff, Armando's family had prepared us a delicious lunch. During our lunch, Ms. Gatz and I presented some gifts to Armando to show him we were thinking of him and his family during these hard times. Armando teared up and then proceeded to give a beautiful speech. Even though some of us didn't understand a word he said, the emotion was there. That day, every heart was touched by the beautiful words of Armando.
Before leaving San Juan, we visited a neighboring town called San Pedro. The purpose of this trip was to meet with Mayor Mauricio Mendez and visit some of his local solutions to the undeniable trash problem in Guatemala. The mayor explained the new anti-plastic bag law that his organization presented and passed in January of 2017. It prohibits plastic bags and straws, styrofoam containers, and all packaging materials made of polyester. Essentially, San Pedro has banned the use of plastic bags. The government and concerned community members are encouraging people to return to traditional means of transporting foods from the market, such as wrapping fish or meats in banana leaves, or using locally woven baskets to carry produce and other products. We listened to the mayor and his unusually long list of backup mayors talk about the issues their town and other local towns face on a day-to-day basis. He discussed the lack of support the central government has for their environmental programs and the constant struggle to maintain these programs once they've been implemented. The one goal is to conserve the lake that provided their ancestors with and will provide them with so many resources. They believe that if they can enforce the anti-plastic bag law, then it will eventually solve the other environmental waste problems the people of Lake Atitlan face.
Language lessons in San Juan started at 8:30 a.m. After eating breakfast with our families, we would walk down the hill, meeting up with each other on the way to the Spanish school. We took a test to determine our Spanish level, and then were split up into groups of 2 or 3 and assigned to teachers. Each group was in its own little classroom, which were all outside and very simple. There would be a table and chairs and occasionally a portable whiteboard, but nothing else. The view was incredible. Sometimes my class would take a break from talking to just look out over the lake and the volcanoes. Some groups would spend their class walking on the beach and picking up shells or playing games near the lake. My group would spend about the first half hour of class talking about common phrases that we could use in daily life. We'd write down phrases that we wondered about or had trouble communicating without during the day, and then bring them to class the next morning for our Spanish teacher to translate or explain. The next part of class we spent on specific speaking activities. My group worked a lot on the past tenses, and this was usually the section of the day that would focus on worksheets or verbal exercises to practice the past tense. The last portion of our morning, we would often simply have a group conversation in combined Spanish and English. Our conversation topics would range widely, from politics to our trip, to our pets, to even telling jokes. It wasn't so much about the content, it was more about the experience of getting to practice Spanish in a conversational setting.
And some of us were fortunate to take a class in Tutsuhil, the Mayan language. You're going to hear some of that now.
Harinin shin kehe patinamit shin she koku abach shin wochtaki hat sich sutuhil achlinak kin kas uts.
So the Spanish translation is, Yo estuve en San Juan de la Laguna aprendiendo el idioma maya Tutsuhil de forma fácil. I was in San Juan de la Laguna learning the Mayan language, Tutsuhil, and it was easy. It wasn't.
After lessons, we would have a brief break while all the groups reconvened in the main building, after which we would do various types of group activities. Often, this would be the time for our circle and morning meeting, and sometimes the Spanish school had planned special activities, bracelet making, making tortillas and guacamole, or playing an ancient Mayan ball game. The Mayan ball game is called Peats, and it is played with a large solid rubber ball, which could weigh as much as 9 pounds. The goal is, similarly to modern ball games, to get the ball through the hoop, but in this case the hoop was hung high up, far above head height, on the wall of the court. Players are not allowed to let the ball touch their hands, and in some cases the ground. The players have to use their forearms, hips, legs, feet, and heads to score a goal, and because it is so difficult, the goal would often mark the end of the game. The winners historically would be celebrated and treated as heroes and fed an enormous meal, while the losers were often killed, possibly for sacrifice. I learned a little bit about the Eco-Spanish School during language lessons, but since returning, I've looked them up and learned a little bit more, and it's really interesting. The Eco-Spanish School teaches immersion programs for both Spanish and the local Mayan dialect, Tutujil, with more intense language lessons and longer-term homestays. Their community garden of nearly 5,000 square feet is available for local people to grow food in, as well as to grow food to be distributed to poor families, and they also sponsor the education of 50 children from poor families every year.
Here we have Rosa, who is part of a cooperative that makes some fine craftsmanship out of the softest cloths. She taught us about how they dye their materials at the co-op. They use plants like piricon, pimiento, ilamo, and sacatinta to make colors like blue, yellow, green, red, and brown. Rosa then showed us the process that the women take to dye their materials. First they boil water, then they put the plant with the desired color into the boiling water. After a while they soak the material into the colored water, and the longer that they soak the material, the stronger the color will be. We took lessons on weaving at Lima, which is owned by a weaving cooperative of women led by Rosa. We were introduced to some of the women at the co-op, and each of them were working on their own patterns. We were then told to select from the patterns, and the women that were working on them would then show us the process of making our tejidos that we would be keeping. Some of us had to double up with our teachers, but we all ended up taking our own scarves to our home. The work was hard and took lots of time, and many errors were made. But when we left from this activity, we were left with a lot of appreciation for the hard work that these women go through every day.
do this was crazy in comparison to how quickly these women could be. All of the items in this store use the natural dyes of plants. And there are hammocks, and scarves, and table runners.
On our second to last day in San Juan de la Laguna, one of our teachers named Benedicto Ishtamar, who is a famous painter in Guatemala, taught us about how he paints, and then led us through the process. He had us at first sketch scenes of two volcanoes, a house, and a lake, which were represented by two triangles as the volcanoes, a square and a triangle as the house, and a circle as the lake. We then used oiled paints, and with a bit of blending, we all had our final products.
So upon arrival at Earth Lodge, we were dropped off and began our short walk down. When we got to the bottom, we arrived at a lush lawn with many avocado trees, as well as no shortage of other shrubs and vegetation. We were directed to our rooms. For the boys, we walked down a longer flight of stone stairs that came to a field that consisted of a small playground in the left corner, a large wooden awning type structure, under which were 5 to 6 hammocks with which some folks were lounging on. There was also a volleyball net and a slack line. In the back right corner of the field, there was a moderately sized stone sauna, a building with bathrooms and a shower, and our cabin, dorm 2. The rest of the day, we simply relaxed and got to take in Earth Lodge. Some of us went down to the slack line, and others got together a small game of volleyball while it was raining slightly, which got a little competitive, but was still very fun. Later, we had a meeting in the main lodge where we participated in an activity directed by Brian. The activity consisted of a map of the world, more or less, drawn by Brian, and different colored markers for all of us. We began by each person drawing a line to places they've traveled. Then we all put a house somewhere we think we've lived. Then a stick figure where we have close family or friends. We all continued to mark different things represented by different symbols. This activity showed the ways we are all connected to the world. Even though most of us have lived in a small island community for our whole lives, that doesn't mean that we cannot experience at least a taste of other cultures. I also think at this time, and after doing this activity, we all began to truly realize how big this trip was for us and how much it has impacted us all. We then had a really nice dinner and then some cake for Joe's birthday, which was hands down the best cake I've ever had. After dinner, we all gathered near one of the girls' cabins for a night meeting. During our night meeting, we talked about our greatest challenges with the group dynamic and some exclusiveness. In these night meetings, there's a question asked in the beginning, and then we go around in a circle with everyone answering the question. This can be as much or as little as the person would like to share. The question of this night meeting was, what was your biggest challenge or a time you felt the most challenged on this trip, or something like that. So these meetings tended to get pretty deep at points. During a long trip with a group of people, a cycle occurs. Yeah. Our group was no exception. There was some storming at the halfway point that was not really confronted, and on this night, we tried to confront it more as it was one of our last nights in Guatemala. Overall, I think people who wanted to say something for the most part did. Also, after the meeting, some people said some things to try and help people confront problems, and a few of us went to other people's rooms to check in, give a hug. I think it was a good step in the right direction. We all went back to for the boys, we went back to our rooms and played Cards Against Humanity, and then we ended up outside at the hammocks, and we got to see a volcano erupt, which
The strongest sense of community and family values I've ever experienced. Guatemala, my brief 2-week home away from home. I was so ready to be back in Maine, but somehow at the same time, not ready to leave. Walking through the streets in my traje típico, getting laughs from teenagers and nods of respect from the elders. Felt so strange but welcoming at the same time. The most eye-opening experience of my life, topped off with the most spectacular of fireworks. Watching Volcan Fuego erupt and feeling the rumble course through the valley and up the mountainside where we observe this natural phenomenon. Guatemala's way of saying goodbye.
Everything and everyone still appear to be asleep in the murky dark of the very early morning. There are no sounds save for the lullaby of nature, so serene in its beauty that I'm afraid to move or even breathe lest I disrupt its peace. A brisk wind gently swirls through the valley, slowly drying the dew-covered landscape. The rustling of leaves and the trickling of some nearby yet hidden stream seem as if they could be whispering to each other, having a quiet conversation that I don't have the power to understand, disrupted only by the occasional call of a bird or scratching of a squirrel. Slowly, the golden light of a new day begins to dust the tops of the tall, imposing volcanoes in order to chase away the shadows of a chill night in the high mountains. However, only the occasional daring ray of sunlight makes it through the expansive leafy canopy to touch the ground below, dusting it with a faint watery light that finally begins to awaken the world.
The next morning, some of us woke up in hammocks, others in dorms. We went up to the main cabin to meet with the rest of our group to be met by our instructors with a plan. They paired us up with someone that they thought we didn't talk to that often to give us an opportunity to connect with another member of the group. We had a breakfast of fresh fruit, eggs, toast, and juice. We ate with our partners and talked about the group, our experience so far in Guatemala, and reasons for choosing to go on the trip. Also just general things about life. Afterwards, we all went down to the field in front of our dorm and had a variety of postcards from Guatemala laid out in a circle in front of us. Some of them scenery, some old indigenous people, some pictures of the marketplace, but all small but important parts of Guatemala. Just like our first day here, we looked at each postcard and thought about the real story behind it, not just the image that the photographer was portraying. So we were all instructed to take 5 minutes alone to take in the image and think about what it really meant. Then write a small message to our past selves describing these postcards.
This isn't as poetic as everyone else's. One of the things I reflected on was how we did not have our cell phones. The whole group's experience was enhanced as we were able to connect on bus rides, in downtime, and in our rooms before bed. In all the moments we would have been on our phones, we connected to each other, laughed with each other, and found out little things about each other. I believe a large part of this was because we had no phones to retreat to. We were pushed farther out of our comfort zones and were shown the freedom away from technology. And this overall really enhanced our experience.
After that, we did a sensory activity where the instructor would say color, and then we would write maybe the green of the trees for Guatemala, or just the first thing that came to mind after saying the color. Afterwards, we all gathered for a group photo. Earth Lodge was an awesome taste of familiarity with our own lifestyle back home, not to mention the warm showers, which felt heavenly compared to the room temperature sponge baths we had become accustomed to. We then got on the bus and headed to the city of Antigua for our final portion of our trip.
Antigua is a relatively small city surrounded by 3 large volcanoes, and it's well known for its colonial-style buildings. Its most famous landmark being the Santa Catalina Arch, which is located on 5th Street and leads straight to a beautiful yellow church. For our one and only day in Antigua, we were given several hours to explore the city in small groups. First on the agenda for most people was finding lunch. Then one popular destination was the Chocolate Museum. But a large part of everyone's time was spent in the market. These markets had everything from necessities like shoes and clothes to touristy items like wooden animals, carved boxes, flutes, textiles, pottery, hammocks, and almost everyone's favorite item, Juancho pants. It didn't matter where you went in the market, you were always surrounded by colorful shops and noisy vendors constantly yelling out to you asking what you were looking for. However, you always had to be ready to barter for a better price. After a long day of exploring the streets of Antigua, we all met back at our hotel for a group activity. During this activity, each person spent time writing an individual message on a sticky note to every other person in the group. These notes were generally about something you admired or appreciated about that person, and were a wonderful way to reflect on how each one of us had grown throughout the trip, as individuals and as a group. Then, to finish off our last day in Guatemala, we had a very fun pizza dinner at our restaurant just down the street from our hotel.
So at this time, we're going to watch our final vignette of the evening, and this is a film by Sarah Suchek.
Sleeping in someone else's bed isn't too bad for me. A bed is a bed is a bed. My pillow, however, is the one thing I long for during my nights here. You never realize how accustomed your neck is to sleeping in the same position every night until one day your pillow changes.
Me llamo Melanie y tengo 9 años.
This trip has brought forth a myriad of changes, but there still remains a few constants. Everyone smiles the same way. You open your mouth and widen it. That's still the same. A smile means the same thing, as does a hug and a kiss on the cheek. The teeth are the same. We all have noses, fingernails, and little wrinkles in places only we know on our bodies. Some things have stayed the same.
Mi esperanza en la vida es que está mi familia. Y tengo esperanza de que yo pueda seguir adelante.
Hola, me llamo Jimmy. Tengo 14 años. Sí, porque él es muy grande y creó todo el mundo. Nosotros tenemos esperanza en nuestra vida porque eso es muy bueno y nos ayuda a salir adelante en momentos difíciles, y también podemos dar esperanza a las demás personas cuando estén pasando por un momento malo. Podemos ayudarlo, y la esperanza es muy importante en nuestra vida. Siempre tenemos que tener esperanza para ser más fuertes.
My host sister is most interested in Disney's Frozen and owns a plate and a mug that have colorful scenes from the movie on both. At mealtimes, my host family presents me with these dishes. It seems that is their warmest and best attempt to make sure I am familiar with at least one aspect of their life. I'm thankful for these attempts.
Mi esperanza es, tengo esperanza de sacar adelante a mis hijos sola, ¿verdad? Como mi esposo ya no está vivo, sola yo soy mamá, papá para mis hijos, comida, ropa, zapatos, en mis manos está. Mi esposo ya tiene 6 años de haber muerto, pero hasta aquí Dios no me ha dejado sin comer. Siempre hemos comido, aunque sea sencillo, pero siempre hemos comido, ¿ya? Y eso es lo que mi esperanza en sacar adelante a mis hijos, que ellos tengan una profesión, que salgan adelante, porque ahorita yo les doy a ellos, pero tal vez más después ellos me van a ayudar a mí.
The differences are louder and less subtle than the similarities. They scream at me in harsh voices and sometimes pinch me in the most tender places. I miss running water that isn't stolen by the privatization of natural resources. I don't miss it so much for myself as I do for my family and neighbors here.
Mis sueños es, como le diré, casi lo mismo de la esperanza, sacar adelante a mis niños siempre y que Dios siempre nos ayude a lo que yo necesito, porque la verdad que hay momentos difíciles donde no hay dinero, donde a veces no hay para comprar nada y a veces hay mucho, me desespero mucho, pero como le digo, tengo que pedirle a Dios primero, ¿verdad? ¿Qué es lo que tengo que hacer? Y sacar adelante a mis hijos, tenga o no tenga, tengo que ver qué hacer para poder darles de comer a mis hijos.
I feel guilty knowing I'll be able to go home soon and shower carelessly, as well as doing the most basic of things like flush the toilet or wash my hands. The differences seem abundant and the similarities seem scarce and trivial, yet I'm comforted by the fact that we all fall asleep at night under a blanket, resting our head on a pillow.
Our presentation for this evening, but I would like to maybe have the students come up to have a seat on the stage, and if there are any questions that anybody might have after viewing this, they would love to answer them for you.
came up with like a really basic response to tell people that would just kind of deflect further questions, but wasn't really that great.
Yeah, hopefully. Hope to go back.
You spend as much time on electronics now as you did before you went? Probably.
The first week and a half or 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks, I like it was kind of like no, like it's something did change. Then you just get into it. You get back into like normal life or like what you before.
What elevation were you guys at?
A high one.
Like 5,000 to 8,000 feet.
Can you see across the lake? Is it like a great lake where you can't see the other side?
Yeah, you can see
I'm sorry?
You can see across.
You can see. You will
Wait,
see.
what?
You can see other parts of the lake. One spot of the lake.
Not as big as the Great Lakes. No, you can see across. Yeah.
The lake wasn't like on the horizon.
Like you can like it's all mountains, like the whole thing is surrounded by mountains, so you can definitely see the mountains on the other side of the lake. I don't know about details such as towns, but you can definitely see details. There is some
Did you find your letters from home helpful?
Yeah.
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 Were you surprised? So the parents wrote open when letters, and so the students were given a stack of letters upon arrival, and open when there's a certain emotion, etc. So they had a stack of letters from home because there was no contact with home apart from one phone. They got one phone call the first night, and then they don't take their phones. Just for those of you that aren't family members or part of this trip, no phones, no internet access. Although some of them may have had access a time or two, depending, but really limited. And so it was probably more challenging, I think, for parents and family members at home to not have that connection with their children than it was for the kids who were out there experiencing all of these new things every day, but weren't for families having limited contact. Am I right, parents?
Yes.
Okay.
It sounds like you all did a lot of social emotional growth work as a group on this trip, which is different from my experiences on group trips, and I'm wondering if anybody would be willing to reflect on how that's changed the way they think of or changed their social dynamics within the group on the trip, if that strengthened it or changed it in any way, or how that seems to be affecting the social atmosphere or social scape as you re-enter back on MDI from this experience. More related, so you can
Yeah. Gotcha. I think it totally strengthened like our group dynamic and just like the social dynamic of the trip when we did those night circles. Because you learn stuff about everybody, and you I don't know, you learn how similar people are to you, I guess, and also how different, and you learn about. I guess like the differences aren't. It's really cool to learn about the differences people have compared to you, I guess. And then coming back, I guess it did change how I thought about stuff socially. I guess we see each other like one block a day, or like as a group, so that's always really fun because like to bond so much with a group and then kind of get separated, but there's always like that one day, or that one block, I mean, that you can all get back together and it's fun. So I thought it definitely helped with like the social aspect of school and just like life. Anyone else wants to add?
Okay. I definitely think it helped on returning too, because we were all like so close to each other that we were able to like say like, oh, like this is so weird, like are you feeling the same thing? And like we were able to like, yeah, we had the 80 minutes to do that, but also like outside of class I feel like we were doing that too. So yeah, it definitely like it helped us on the return.
Oh, well, okay. It definitely helped us strengthen the group aspect, but when at least what I felt when we like re-entered into this, like all my friends in school, it was weird how close like I personally got to like all of you, and then seeing how I wasn't as close to my friends here as I thought I was. So like all the things I learned about all of you in the 2 weeks, whereas like people I knew for years and years, and I wasn't as close as I thought I was.
I think that one thing that I personally noticed is, well, one of our instructors, I forget which one, said that when we get back, we should all make a conscious effort to say hi to each other in the hallways. And like I kind of noticed that like we actually were doing that, even if we hadn't been that close before the trip. Like we actually did make more of an effort to, you know, just do things like say hi to each other when we passed by, and like it was just nice, I guess.
So it definitely, in the night meetings, you get to, or with the questions we had, you learn a lot about how everyone's been through a lot of hard stuff, and how that's like made them into the person they are. And you learn to be a little more sensitive, I think, of people, and also getting back. Getting back, you realize how sheltered we are, and how when you're just busy living your life, you don't think about a lot of things that are going on in the world.
I'm just remembering this right now. I remember me and Graham were talking about it after the last like night meeting. It was just like, it was kind of a short thing. It was basically just like a thing we kind of learned on this trip, where we started to like catch on to, was that like the idea that like when you're having a conversation with someone new, or just like anyone, it's really like, if I like we started to do this in the night circles, or just started to do it near the end of the trip, is that when you like are talking to them, a lot of times I feel like I'm like already thinking of a response in my head while they're telling me what they're really trying to say, and so you kind of lose focus on what like they're saying. But what like we really tried to do was like really listen to what they're saying, I guess, like totally 100%, and then what like you will have something to say because you fully listened, and that's just like an important thing, I think, with like meeting new people and getting closer with the group. So
I think also like I didn't know a lot of you very well, and I think just getting to know you all and starting to understand that a lot of us are more similar than I realized, and I think that just made me look at everyone, especially at school, like coming back to school, it made me look at everybody differently.
So I'm curious if anybody's had a perspective shift as far as material possessions. Has anybody sat down to like shop for something and thought, God, I don't need it? Or, you know, through Sarah's film, and like woman's focused on feeding her kids,
one thing, but definitely, especially in my homestay, there was running water every once in a while. And so coming back and noticing things just like flushing the toilet, it's just huge. And that was super weird to come back to, and just realizing how much we have that we don't think about. Definitely.
I couldn't say I haven't made, I can't say I've made like a conscious like change to what I've done. I mean, I definitely think about it more after that.
I think what made me think about that was a story that my host father told me while I was there. So he told me about the time that his wife, my host mother, almost died because of a tumor she had. And so I asked him how much was the surgery for it, and he told me 1,500 quetzales. And then I went home and I did the math, and I realized that that was $300, and it was so humbling, and it made me realize that I could spend that much shopping for Christmas gifts, and like it's nothing, and $300 was life and death for somebody else.
I think for me what changed the most was just how I view, I guess, the environment that we have here. In Guatemala there was a lot of pollution, there were a lot of plastic items that were just on the side of the road. You would like see these cliffs that just had these giant cascades of just trash, and it was just kind of like coming back, like I just thought about that a lot, and I thought about how awful it was to see, and how grateful I am that like we do have, like we are slightly better about it, and we are more educated about pollution, especially on the island. But like I think we still need to make the effort to stop using plastic bags and use more reusable containers and stuff like that.
I just want to say that I'm so impressed by the whole presentation and how much work went into it, and creativity in showing us what you got to experience, and also the courage that it took for all of you to be willing to go to this foreign place and experience all these foreign things in so many ways, from language to culture to group dynamics to the learning that you had with with how the people there were trying to protect their environment. And I really have great admiration for what you've done, and also that it's not easy to put something together like this and to stand up in front of people and to share like you have. And I just want to commend you. You've done an amazing job.
One thing I've noticed is really a lot since we've been back is how much we waste, and how much waste each person produces. Yeah, just everything we buy comes in something that we just throw away, and then we don't see it again. But in Guatemala, you can see it everywhere, so it's pretty shocking. Oh yeah, and also about the materialistic things. The first thing I gave to some kid that was at my house, I think he was like my cousin or something, but I gave him a little Lightning McQueen Matchbox car, and every time I saw him, he had that thing. Every single time. And and I gave him some bouncy balls, and just, our kids, when we were kids, we had all these toys and all this stuff, but these kids have like a little car or some bouncy balls, and that makes their whole childhood pretty much. So it's pretty cool.
So we spend so much money just like trying to make things happier for ourselves. Like for example, phones. But we went to Guatemala and we didn't have our phones, and I think those 2 weeks were probably the most fun I've ever had in my life. And they involved not having a phone, to connect with other people, and just being with the people that I have there and being in the present. And I just had a lot of fun then. So, yeah.
Is there any fish in the lake, Connor?
Yeah, there was definitely fish in the lake. We didn't actually go fishing, but there were like fish in the market and stuff like that. Yeah.
Tilapia, what kind of fish were they? Do you know?
I have no clue. What kind of stuff?
There's like a little thing about fishing. Like the first day with our host family, me and September were like trying to talk to them. Like we talking to them, not trying, but so we were like, we were talking to our like brother, and he was like, tomorrow, like this is what we picked up. He's like, tomorrow we'll go fishing, and we were like, oh sweet, but he went like this. He was like, we were like, what? Like what? Like I thought we like passed the line, and so then like a few days later, we like walked downstairs, and there was just like a bunch of harpoon guns just like sitting there. So we were like, oh okay, like, yeah.
Do you guys think the education system in Guatemala, like, I forget you said, like the less walls sort of system, do you think that's like a more effective way or a more engaging way, and like could possibly change the way it's done here? I guess whether it was just like, do you think it's better or more effective, and we should strive to do more things like that?
You mean like the Eco Spanish school or the?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. I thought it was awesome because we were outside. Like that was great.
I think it was really cool because it wasn't as structured as school is here, and like we really got to connect more with our teachers and ask them like what their families were like and stuff, and it was just part of the lesson in a way, but it was also, it made it a lot more engaging, and they were very, very patient with us, and that was really awesome. And we ate really good guacamole.
And I just want to clarify, that's not the educational system of Guatemala. That was just this program, which is unique. So when you talk about schooling in Guatemala, that's very different from the experience that these students had. And absolutely, this kind of hands-on experiential learning is very different from what we experience inside the walls of our classroom. And I think that they have struggled with, you know, being in the walls, being in their seats, and having, you know, spent 2 weeks really outdoors and, you know, so much hands-on. Yeah. I don't know if there were any other final words that anybody had. So is Angie still here? Angie, can you stand up? This is Angie Del Vecchio. So, come on up. So Angie is our nurse practitioner that travels with us, and she's a very valuable part of this team. So I just want her recognized and honored, and also we just have a gift for you. She gives up a lot of time to be a part of this program, so you are very much appreciated, and thank you. That's our show. That's our evening. So thank you.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm so sorry.
Get the lights to turn on, right? I know Max is on the sound side.
Should we check in with Jobo before we leave? Or maybe?